Okay, so welcome to this week's podcast of Crap No One Tells You. And today we have with us a special guest, Jay London, the college advice guy. And I've been lucky enough to have lengthy conversations with Jay about this stuff. And we could probably do 5 episodes and still not get through everything. So, Jay, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Gummy.
So let's just get started with what is some crap nobody tells you about going to college or college admission process.
Right. Well, I think it's accurate that we said we've had lengthy conversations. I do not ever end up dry when it comes to things to talk about with college. I think the biggest misconception people have about the college process is that it's basically all laid out for you. And it is all laid out for you. You're told in high school, if you want to be successful, do well in school, and then the better you do, the better college you'll get into.
Right.
Right.
Theoretically.
Theoretically, that's right. So the students and the parents naturally take the lead of the teachers and counselors and even admissions representatives from colleges as far as what you need to do in order to be granted entry to the sanctum of college. And as a result, it puts a lot of people on edge. The big misconception that people have, as I said, is that this process is laid out for you and it's simple. It's simple. It's simple to fill out an application.
Well, I had an employee that just went through this process, and I am pretty sure she spent more time on that than she did actual work. So I don't know how simple it actually is.
Right. That's the illusion. The illusion is there's a common application. That's what they call it, the common application. You fill it out. You can send it to up to, well, soon it'll be 1,000 colleges. I think if students could, the way they do the process, they would send 1,000 applications. I don't even vote.
Those aren't free, by the way.
No, they're not free.
Right.
$40, $80, $100 a piece.
Okay.
No, so my goal is to make sure that families understand that before you can pick a college, you have to know what it is that you are picking a college for. What's your student going to college for?
Right.
Well, my kid's undeclared. Well, there's a big difference between undeclared, not knowing your major, and being unprepared. So my question becomes, what job do you want to get? I'm not quite sure, right? Well, if you don't know what job or career you're looking for, then how do you know what kind of training you need? In other words, how do you know what kind of college you have to get to? And then prior to that, how do you even go to college? So let me see if I can be a little less amorphous and lengthy. A lot of time needs to be spent preparing to prepare to go to college.
Right. So do you think most people start the process way too late?
I always say late and early is a relative term.
Okay.
So for example, if you follow the traditional course, if that you're told in high school, if you wait until March of your junior year to take your first SAT to see how you're going to do, and then take another one in May or June, and hopefully you'll do better. Your application can get filled out as early as August 1st. If you go early action, then you can know by November, and then you're done, right? Technically.
So that would be, you would know November of your senior year.
You would supposedly know December of your senior year. You'd apply by November, know in December early action. And most people find out later around February or March.
So by the time that happens, it would be too late to reapply to somewhere else.
It's not too late to reapply. There are schools with rolling admission, but what it is too late to do is to maximize your child's value as an asset to a college. And I'll explain that. The colleges are businesses. When they select the people going to their school, they need to make sure that they can fill the seats and they have a desired class structure that they want, the types of people there to have a diverse environment. They want, female engineers and they want male ballet dancers and they want any ballet dancers and people going into the arts and people going into philosophy and people who are athletes. So they're trying to craft a class. Some colleges are just looking to fill seats, but ideally they will fill it with what they're looking for, like a recruited athlete. Well, they do really the same thing for all of their students. So it's really important to value or to get the most value out of what your child has done. For example, the greater their GPA, that increases their value. The better their SAT, ACT score, that increases their value to some schools. But there's other things. Schools are looking for well-rounded people, people who've been involved in community service, people who are following their passion, people who've spent time, years even, pursuing a hobby, doing something to better the community. And if you start late, if you start in March of your junior year, you still have time to improve upon who you are as far as the schools are looking at you. But it makes it a little more difficult. It's never too late, but it makes it a little more difficult. If you don't start until then, it makes it more important to have me, an advisor, to help you get the most out of that time.
So it's really a combination of not just what your grades and scores are, but they look at your overall life, so to speak.
Yeah, they call it,
That can matter. Like,
yeah, they call it the holistic process, but they do it in a holistic way. I want people to understand that that your kid's going to go to college. Your kid, if they want to go to college, they're going to college. Might not be exactly where they want to go or think they want to go, but they're going to college. And that's important if you need that college degree. It's not where you start. It's what you do once you're there and how you continue to develop those skills once you're out of college.
so it really sounds like you should start prepping and thinking about these things at least during your sophomore year, not your junior year, and start looking at what are my options? What would I need to get involved with that isn't school related? Like, it sounds like, honestly, most people start this process way too late. So what are some things that if I had a kid that was going to college, he's now a sophomore, or, well, this is being recorded right after graduation.
Right.
So if he just finished his sophomore year, what are some things I should start looking at right now? Like, should I evaluate my student whether or not he wants to go to college? Should I start looking at what do they want to go for and what is required, or what are some additional things we could be doing to increase his, I guess, chances or likelihood of getting in where he should go? And I don't say wants to go.
Yeah.
I say should go because there's a difference between the two, right?
Well, like in anything else, knowledge is power. So the sooner we start getting an understanding, or a child develops an understanding of who they are, what they like to do, why they like to do what they like to do, what classes they like and why, what their aptitudes are. And there's a big difference between aptitudes, what they're good at, and their interests, what they enjoy doing. And finding that balance that's appropriate for directing them in particular ways to further their understanding of those areas. So to be a little clearer, I have a parent will call and say, I'm so frustrated. I can't get my kid to do anything but play video games 8 hours a day. He won't tell me what's happening in school. I don't know who her friends are. I don't know what she spends her time doing. Why does she study this way, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important to start breaking that down, to have an understanding of why they do what they do. So for example, and I do interactive.
So this is more the psychology of what you do and not the process of what you do.
This is what I believe makes what I do somewhat unique in that, and it frustrates parents to death. Kids will talk to me about their lives, what they like, what they don't like, why they do what they do, but they won't tell the parents. So it's difficult if your child won't tell you about things that they're thinking about or interested in, it's hard to direct them. So in the beginning, and to answer your question, in 10th grade, how do you do that? So the kid who plays video games, we sat down and what is it about playing that you like? Is it just escapism? Are you captivated by the motion? Do you like the sounds? Do you like the story? Do you end up developing stories? Do you like the interaction? A lot of times, since it's live online, students enjoy the interaction with people and they actually have leadership skills and see what their role is. And then that gives us a launching point to discuss things. When I talk to the parents, I say, relax a little bit. First of all, for scholarships, there are now major colleges that give full scholarships for their e-gaming teams, for their video gaming teams. And I also say, let's just use video games as a way to explore what aspect of video gaming he likes or she likes and why. You may end up studying deal making. You may end up looking into finance and working in the video game industry, being an attorney, being a representative of somebody in there. So whatever their interests are, we embrace them and break them down. And it's never too late to do that. So I know that's the psychology of it, but knowledge, give your kids some knowledge. They're afraid to move forward because they don't know what they don't know. So when you say, what do you like? What do you want to be? When they say, I don't know, they mean, I don't know what's out there.
Right. I don't know what my options are.
That's right. So, and I tell them, and you can tell them, it's okay not to know. We failed you. Okay. We as a system, an educational system as a society have dropped the ball as far as actually telling you how your skills relate to what's out there in the real world. And that's because social media, the internet, we just assume that people know what's going on. So if someone says, I like helping people, okay. So I go on to the Occupational Outlook Handbook on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and I put in helping professions. And it'll list helping professions,
Which there are probably a lot.
yeah. So then you go, well, let's look at nursing, and you click on nursing, and it'll tell you what nurses do and how do you become a nurse and what they make and where you should look to get a job. And then if you're like, well, I'm not quite sure I like that, but here's related jobs.
Right.
So they need the help going through what it is that they can choose from before they can make a decision.
So it's really about figuring out for both the kids and the parents early on is why do they like what they like? Like, what's the reasoning behind it?
Right.
And then going from there, figuring out what professions or what could be similar in the real world that would then apply to why they do what they do, or why they choose what they choose.
And we don't even at this time, that's right, but we don't even at this time focus on the profession, because I tell people we're not selecting a college to get a job. We want to know the areas of your aptitude and your interests that you want to develop and make sure you develop in while you're in college. You don't, excuse me, you can major, minor, certificate, specialize, double minor. I don't like to get that hooked up on those labels. I want the student to know the 2 or 3 areas that they want to explore so that when they start college, they can do that exploration and then decide, which way. That's a prepared, undeclared student as opposed to an undeclared, unprepared student.
Isn't it? I remember I saw a statistic somewhere that it's only a tiny percentage that actually works in whatever field they majored in college.
That's right.
So you're really talking about prepping them for life, not prepping them for a job.
Yeah, that's right. It's developing the skills, making sure you utilize college to develop the hard skills that you need for a particular profession, as well as the soft skills of being in the business world. But the hard skills nowadays are not just cut and dried. When someone says, I'm going into IT or I'm going into computer science, that's like, I'm going to go pick up dinner. What are you going to get? Something at the grocery store,
Right.
There's so much of it. So yeah, I recently, a few months ago, I was doing a presentation or a seminar at a business, and there was about 60 employees. And interestingly, I said, how many of you went to college and got a degree? And it was 57 out of the 60 people. And then I raised them. I mean, I asked them to raise their hand. I said, how many of you are working in a job that's related to anything that you studied in college, what your major was? And there were 12 people. And then I asked, how many of you are working in a job right now that require a bachelor's degree? And 2 people raised their hand.
So 2 out of 60 people were in a job that required the degree
A
that they.
bachelor's degree, that's right.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have gone to college,
No, yeah,
but I'm
there's
saying that's what the disconnect is.
right.
So the importance at this stage of talking about knowing what you don't know, finding the information so you can start making or even start looking is 25% of everyone who starts college this year across the board will drop out of school and not return to college ever.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people going to college
Yeah.
that never should. There's people who have financial situations, medical
Right.
issues, things like that.
All kinds of things can happen in life.
That's right. Of that, so the next 25 to actually 30% will transfer. So now you have more than 50% of the people who applied to a college that at the time they probably thought was right or they knew why they were going are no longer at that college.
Right.
And transferring costs you a lot. When you transfer school, the statistics say it typically adds about 9 months to the amount of time that you're in school.
So it's a full year, basically.
Yeah,
It's a full
basically,
school year.
that's right. Basically, it's a full year. And then for the people who stay in college, the last statistic that came out, which was in 2018, was 38% of everybody who starts college will graduate within 4 years.
Okay.
So people say college is the next 4 years of my life. Well, that's only 38% of the people
Right.
stay and graduate in 4 years. Why is that? These are graduating people. Don't know what they wanted to do when they get there. They don't know how to go through college. They had other issues that weren't anticipated. That comes from lack of preparation. So that's and then it doesn't get much better at 5 years.
Right.
When you're at 51%, and then 6-year graduation rate is 59%. Now, we're not talking about the flagship schools. We're not talking about people who who were at the Ivy League schools. They have higher graduation rates and mostly higher
But
than that.
isn't the common denominator that the people that generally will go to those schools have also been prepping for that type of, like,
That's right.
it doesn't seem like you would go to MIT, for
Right.
example, unless that is something you have to have a very strong interest base
That's right.
in a specific thing before you apply even to MIT.
And many people who go to those schools have been prepping since preschool. And the reason I say that is because there was a lawsuit a few years ago. A family brought suit against a preschool that they thought they first of all, they sued to get their 4-year-old into the preschool that was supposed to be a feeder to an Ivy League. This is preschool. And then brought a suit a year later for saying, you didn't give me what I thought it was supposed to be. So yeah, those people who've been prepping since then, those kids who are winning national medals at 13, people who know what they've always wanted to do at 15, and people who know basically what they want to study and go to their state school,
right,
to become a teacher, to become a nurse. They go through,
but
the majority,
as we established earlier, that is a tiny percentage of people going to school.
That's right.
You were saying what, 25% drop out the
Right.
first year?
Correct.
So at least 25% of all college students probably had no clue what they were getting into.
Absolutely none. And
because we have another 25% that then will switch, right? So let's say 30%, even 35% of all kids that go to college, A, had no clue what they wanted to get out of college, or B, thought they knew what they wanted and then read into the snafu of, well, that's not taught at this college, or this college isn't right for me. So that's a staggering number of people that really were, I don't think it's fair to say that they were unprepared. Could we say they were um, under researched, like they didn't understand the process, the options, the selections, the
Well, we could, um, but we'd be sugarcoating it. The reason I say unprepared, here's another statistic. This is what really gets me. You graduate from high school. You've been certified by your high school that you are meeting the standards of that high school, of the state, and technically are prepared to do college level work.
Mhm.
A substantial amount of students, first of all, when you go to most colleges, you have to take placement tests to see how prepared you are to do math and how prepared you are to write in English.
On top of the test you already took.
This is once you've been admitted. So a school has made a determinate, college makes a determination that according to the certification of your high school, you can do college level work. History has shown that that's not true all the time. Schools differ, high school curriculum differ, grades differ. You do placement tests, and then they find out that a substantial amount of students, let's say was around 20 to 25%, a little less than 25%, have to take at least 2 remedial courses. That means students who've been admitted to college have to take at a college cost, high school classes, high school level classes.
Those were cheap.
They're not cheap. They're not cheap. It's,
So how would you know whether that applies to your high school? Like, how do you know, or is it based on state? How would you know as the buyer or the, college user that whatever classes you're taking in high school aren't going to be up to par with whatever college you then want to get into? Like, is there any way of knowing?
well, it's not a matter of whatever college you want to get into. It's a matter of if you're a parent that knows about, your school district or where they're going to school. Parents know whether the grades are earned or not earned. A parent should know if they're on the phone browbeating somebody to give their kid an A when they deserve a C. Parents should know, but they don't, because we're not able to monitor everything that our kids do. During COVID and lockdown, grades were substantially inflated because kids cheated. They'll tell you, I work with them all the time. They weren't being supervised. You can download any kind of app, and
Right.
kids do what they have to do in order to get the grades that they need. And in addition, there was a lessening of the standards. So I'm not saying the kids who are straight A students or all kids cheat. I'm not saying that at all. But if you're coming from if your kid goes to, let's say your child graduates with a 4.0 from a high school, but took all academic level classes as opposed to an honors class or an AP class, it's really hard to know. They just have to meet minimum standards. Remember, that just means if you have a 4.0, you did well enough to get an A. But remember, to pass, you just need a 65%.
Okay.
That A could be on a curve. You have no idea. But they're pretty good indications. If you've read some of your child's work, if your child can't multiply,
Could be a problem.
it could be a problem. But really, I think one of the problems is, why is it that you have to pay a substantial amount of money for remedial classes? If the school finds out after a placement test, it would be nice if they had an affiliation with a community college where you could take that remedial class either free of charge or for several $100s instead of several thousand. It's not a bad thing the college is doing. I mean, they're trying to help. But I'm saying that's the thing you need to know. You need to know how your student studies, what they study, how they learn best, where are their executive functioning skills? Can they get themselves out of bed? Can they follow a schedule? Do they know how to study? So there's a million things.
So the prep before the prep really comes down to get to know your child.
That's right. And I'm a facilitator of that, because it's very, very difficult. The most frustrating thing parents always say to me is, I just said that to him yesterday and he paid no attention. Exactly what you said. And the kid will go, well, I'm not going to listen to you. You're my mom. What do you know? But yeah, it's not, we as parents just say, I'm really proud of my kid. They study really hard. Or I don't know how he gets great grades or she gets great grades. They hardly ever study. But it's just hard to know who exactly your kid is as far as a student. And it's essential. It's essential to know that because college is a significant investment. There are no guarantees that come with a college education, no matter where you go. No college says, go here, graduate here, you have a job and make X, Y, and Z there. Right. There's just an opportunity to get an education. So you need to be prepared to know the process, to effectively go through the process of selecting schools, evaluating the schools, looking at the programs. Filling out an application is not complicated. The essay, people come to me and are always completely, um, flummoxed by it. And I understand why. You have to be able to, basically in 650 words, put your whole worldview, who you are, how you became that person, who you want to be, how you're going to get there in 600 words.
That's reasonable.
Right. And it's supposed to package your application. But you know what? The people that I work with, by the time we get to the essay, they already know because we've gone through that. We've gone through their life. We've gone through the things that they like and why they like them. And now the kids with self-inflection, now they have a better idea of who they are and they're less afraid to say it out loud.
Right.
You know,
So when it comes to other college advisors or people helping guide you through this process, is everybody as involved in this process as you are? Or are you kind of like a rare breed in a field of, because I see this all the time. I see people do, oh, I do college advice.
Right.
Really, all they're doing is helping you fill out applications and then
Right.
dip your toe in the financial aid, right? But they aren't really involved in the process.
Right. Well, I'm going to a conference next week with lots of college counselors. So I can only give you anecdotal information that I hear from other people. I have many clients who've come to me after they've utilized other services, and there isn't a broad brush. I will just say you have to determine what it is that you want out of the process. So at the very least, a college advisor will help, quote unquote, help create a list of colleges for your student to look at. They'll review your application. They'll review your activities list. They'll review and or help somewhat with your essay. They may help fill out the financial aid forms if necessary, tell you about scholarship websites, and then compare your offers when they come in, and then you'll make a decision. But a lot of times you have to be careful that it's not lockstep, that it's not the same process, the same way for the student. And you should know that pretty quickly. I know what distinguishes me from many people is I'm available 24/7. The kids text me. Sometimes they text me late at night. I'm an old person. I'm not up late at night, but I get back to them. I develop a relationship where I want the student to get comfortable enough where they're actually the ones driving the process, asking the questions. When you take the time to get to know them as individuals, the relationship becomes very important. And then everything else becomes a lot easier. It's easier for me to provide them with information about schools and programs that fit what it is that we've measured and make sense, that we then go through very carefully. I'm with them the entire time that they're making the process, going through the process with the essays, financial aid, helping families understand that, although loans are easy to get for college, that it's real money. Scholarships, that goes back to you when people say, okay, I filled out my application. Where do I look for a scholarship? They'll call me for that. And I'll go, well, you should have been looking that person who's going to college is the scholarship magnet. So the more that they do related to particular things, that's what they're going to get scholarships for, not later on when you're just applying for a lottery. So it's I think my background in psychology and law, I utilize to make sure that there is this truly holistic process and that the student feels empowered, doesn't feel silly asking questions, doesn't feel like they're just going through the process. Cause that's happens a lot. A warning to everybody. It's easy to get a college advisor, rely upon them to basically usher your kid through the process at the picking schools, getting an application, submitting them, and you feel better that you submitted applications. You feel better that you've applied to schools and you've gotten in, you've gotten some money, and then your kid still has no idea who they are, what they want to be, why they're going, where they're going, and they're just going to make do.
So it really sounds like with, well, with the way the colleges are, with expenses going up, all that stuff, you almost sound like you should be a necessity more than a luxury, because like it's not a simple process. It's not as simple as people think. There's so many things. And I mean, you're spending the equivalent to a mortgage going to some schools.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So
not for me.
no, but like the school will, you could end up with what, $50,000 semesters, 8 semesters, 400,000. You could buy a,
Yeah.
nice house in the Philadelphia suburbs for that.
Yeah, well, I think because college is so familiar, and colleges typically, it's interesting. One of the very first thoughts I think people have when they're newly married and find out that they're pregnant is they start talking about college funds. How are we going to send this kid to college? And when they're born, some people go, here's a savings bond for their college fund. So it's in your mind, it's predestined that 18 years from now, your kid is going to be going to college, right? Well, unfortunately, a lot of things change. College changes on a daily basis. And all I'm saying is, it is everything that you don't know about the process is going to cost you a lot of money. It'll cost you time and it'll cost you money. You would never go into a large financial transaction, which is what this is, simply letting your child make the decision.
Right.
And that's really what you're doing if you just follow in lockstep, apply to school and go to school. Even if you're applying if you're going to community college first and we're applying to a state school, there's so much you are unaware of before you go that can still cost you money. Transferring out, dropping out, having issues at the school, failing classes, not being prepared. So to have you don't go in and buy a car I'm going to go look around, and your kid will say, I like that $80,000, low end Mercedes.
Right.
And you go, well, you can get the same thing out of that Nissan Sentra. They
Right.
still make Sentras.
And I think so.
I have not endorsed them. If you go by and they both do essentially the same thing, but a
Right.
little more has a lot more of the wants than the needs, that's really, that's a way you have to look at it.
And I kind of like that analogy, because as an employer,
Mhm.
when that person comes for an interview,
Mhm.
as long as they have a reliable transportation,
Right.
I don't care what they pull up in.
Right. Yeah.
So when it comes to ultimately the diploma itself,
Mhm.
your average employer, are they going to care the vast majority of time what that diploma says?
Not for an undergraduate degree.
Right.
Now,
When you get to higher levels, I
when you have
completely
graduate
understand.
degrees or specialties, then, some graduate programs are known, or medical schools are known for particular things. But most employers, again, remember what we said before, most of the people working at their jobs aren't doing what they studied in undergraduate school.
Right.
Right.
And they paid a fortune for it.
That's right. So I am not saying there aren't differences in colleges, and some colleges are better at some things and But are you asking me if you go to an Ivy League school and you're competing for a job with someone who went to another 4-year research one classification or a Division III, a smaller school? People who hire you are people, right? So maybe somebody assumes that a Harvard graduate is going to be better prepared to do the job than someone who went to Lebanon Valley College, right? But like with anything else, you just don't know. You can do certain things to graduate from a school, and what that means to that school could be different from something else. I always say go to a website called What Will They Learn? And it breaks down what you're taught at each school. So really, to answer your question, it's going to come down to what is this person capable of doing? Employers just want to know, can you do it? They don't care who teaches you how to do it as long as you can do it to their level. Will the name school get you in the door? Probably get you in the door, but it's still based upon who you are. There is no proof. There is no metric that says this school is going to get you this compared to another school. There are differences in return on investment, but that matters more on the degree, the area of the degree than the school you went to. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been a good talk.
Lengthy.
I'm pretty sure we could go on for another hour. So maybe we'll bring you back talking about that was another thing that fascinated me. Another conversation I've had with Jay was how you actually interview a college and how you properly tour a college. So maybe we'll bring you back to talk about that.
It'll be less global and more pointed. How's that?
That sounds like a plan to me. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We will see you again soon.